Hey everyone, welcome back to the Maker's Gonna Learn YouTube channel. My name is Alicia, and today we're gonna talk about making reusable stencils. So you may see people use different materials such as stencil vinyl and other things, but today we're gonna be using called Graphics Ultra Clear. Now this is just a very thin, similar to an acetate sheet or like a mylar sheet, but it is 0.007 mils thick. So it's like thinner than a credit card. It's a very thin material, and we're gonna be cutting it with our Cricut, and I'm gonna show you all how to design it in Design Space. That way you can make your own stencils at any point. You're only gonna need a few materials for this. I'll have everything linked below for you all, but you're just gonna need to grab the Graphics Ultra Clear sheets, and they come in a pack of 25. So this little thing right here is 12 by 12 sheets, and there's 25 in here, and they just have a little piece of paper that separates them to keep them nice and unscratched. And I have a strong grip or a standard grip mat will work for this, and then just a brayer. And then obviously you're gonna need a Cricut or a cutting machine, as well as a design software so that we can design our own stencils. So let's go ahead and get into Design Space. Okay, so once you're in Design Space, we're just gonna be doing a text image. Now, there are certain things that you need to pay attention to whenever you're selecting a font choice for your stencils, mainly because we don't want anything super crazy or super detailed. A big, thick font is gonna work really well. The first one that comes to my mind is our Saturday Night font. This is a Maker's Gonna Learn font. We use it for tons of different things. And so you can see here, this is very, very bold. And we really want this because any little pieces or like little details that are not attached to this edge here are gonna be floating around. And so I'm gonna show you all how to attach the middles of these letters to the edge of our stencil. And that's gonna make a little bit more sense here in just a minute. I promise this is such a super, super easy thing to create. And so I'm just going to type out exactly what I want, and we're gonna type out "take it easy." These stencils are really good for if you are making lots of wood signs with the same saying on them. I actually applied this stencil to a canvas pillow, which is really good. So like any thick textiles are gonna work super good for stencils, reusable stencils in particular. But it's just so fun because you can make a lot of things really quickly. So if you're a craft seller, this is gonna be super helpful knowledge for you. So I went ahead and zoomed in for you all so you can really see what is going on here. So what you need to do after you've got your saying completely written out is go ahead and assess the entire text. So we're looking for any little pieces that may be free floating. So you can see this A right here. It's gonna be cut out, but it needs to be connected to the edge. Otherwise, we're gonna be losing all these little pieces after we cut it out of our stencil. So I just see the A and the E here. You can see the A and the S down here. So since this isn't a super detailed font, it's gonna be a lot easier for us to find all of those tiny pieces that need to be attached to the stencil. So what I'm gonna do next is go over to our basic shapes, and we're just gonna pull in a square. Now, we're gonna need to shrink this down really small into a very skinny rectangle. So I'm just gonna unlock the shape. So we just unlock the shape. We're gonna make it really skinny. It's about 0.21 inches. It doesn't have to be an exact measurement. We just need it to be relatively small. And then it needs to be long enough to connect the middle of the letter to the edge of the letter, okay? So we're just gonna adjust it just like that, okay? And now we're gonna make sure to select the square as well as the text. Now you can come over here to your layers panel and select square, and then hold the shift key down and select take. And then all we're gonna need to do is slice that shape into our word. So let me zoom in and you can see what happened here. So it has basically cut this rectangle out of our shape. So I'm gonna select this and delete it. Select and delete, select and delete. So I deleted all my slice results, and now that middle is connected to my A. Now if you wanted to put your little rectangle down here at the bottom, just so it's less obvious. You totally can, but the good thing about using stencils like this is where those letters connect, it's so thin, you're gonna be able to go in with a paintbrush or a foam brush and kind of cover up where it was once you've filled in the entire stencil. And so now what we need to do is just repeat this process for all of the other letters. So again, I'm gonna grab a square, we're gonna unlock it, and then we're just going to shrink this down. And then you can attach it wherever. You can attach it up here, you can attach it there if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. They just need to make sure that you're touching the edge as well as the top of the letter. And so make sure your square is selected, and then I'm just going to click and drag this time. You can click and drag, you can go over to the layers panel and do it that way. And then we're gonna select slice, and then you can zoom in and see here, we just need to delete all of these layers. Okay, and now we can see that it's connected. And then we're just gonna do the same thing for the word easy. Okay, so we have found all of the little pieces that we need to connect. And then depending on the size of your stencil, you can add a border around this to make sure that it cuts it out to the size that you need it to be. You're obviously gonna wanna have space around your stencil. That way you don't accidentally get paint going off the edges or anything like that. We're doing a relatively big stencil today, so this is gonna fill up an entire 12 by 12 sheet of plastic. So I don't actually need to do a border, but let's say that I wanted to put this on a smaller wood sign and this just needed to be, I don't know, let's say 6 by 6. I can go over to my shapes and I'm gonna make a 6 by 6 square. Okay. I'm just gonna change this color so you can see what's going on. And then you could shrink this down so it would fit within your parameters. And then you can select both of these and hit attach. And this is going to actually cut the stencil as well as cut that border around. So you'll have a 6 by 6 stencil ready to go, and you're not using up that entire sheet of the Graphics Ultra Clear. So since we're doing a big stencil, all we need to do is make sure that the sizing of our letters is correct. So we want it to fit within a 12 by 12 square. So obviously this is a little bit too big. I'm just gonna shrink it down so it's like a 10 by 11 stencil. That should be perfect. And then you're gonna wanna make sure that you've selected it all and attached everything. So typically they're gonna be separated still, and you just need to click and drag, select everything and attach it. That way when we go to cut it, everything is cutting exactly where it needs to cut. So the letters aren't gonna move on the mat anywhere. After you get it to the size that you want it, we're gonna select Make It, and then you're gonna wanna make sure to adjust this to a 12 by 12 mat. If it automatically goes to 12 by 24, make sure you're cutting the right size mat. And then I am just going to bump this down kind of in the middle, because we want to remember that when we're painting this, we want to have a little bit of an edge all the way around. That way our paint is not going outside of our stencil, because we'll likely be applying this with a foam brush or something along those lines. So we want to have a little bit of wiggle room. That way, if we cut it all the way up to the top left, you can see it gets so close to the edge of the stencil. And so this allows us to have a little bit more wiggle room. So select Continue. If you've watched other tutorials, you may see that they have different cut settings, and it's really gonna depend on the machine you're using, the blade you're using, things like that. But I really wanted to keep us using a fine point blade. And so what I found is I can go and make my own cut settings, and I just love to do this because I can adjust everything exactly how I want it. I can pick how many passes I want and things like that. So what you're gonna do is go to your material settings, and then you can see in here, we've got all of the pressures and how many passes, what kind of blade we use, all of that. So these are all the cut settings that are already in Design Space. And so I'm just going to add a new material. This is all the way at the bottom on the left side. Click Add New Material, and then you can name this whatever you want. I've been calling it a reusable stencil cut, whatever you want to call it, and then hit Save. So it's going to scroll us all the way back up, and all we need to do is adjust our pressure to the maximum pressure that Cricut will allow us. And then right here in the drop down menu, I'm gonna select 6 passes. Now, if you're using a deep cut blade, you probably aren't gonna need this many passes, but I really wanted to just stick with our fine point blade for those of you that don't actually have a deep cut blade. And then we're just going to save it. Now, I'm gonna scroll back up and go off of this screen. And then we can browse our materials again, and I'm gonna type in reusable. Okay, and then you can bookmark it if you're using it very often. I like to bookmark my favorite cut settings. Select done, and I am gonna add more pressure. So I wanna make sure that we're really getting through this plastic, and then you're gonna go ahead and load it into your Cricut. Okay, so go ahead and remove the cover of your mat. Now, a standard grip mat works perfectly fine for this, or a well-loved strong grip mat will also work well for you. We just do not want it to move off of the mat. And so I'm just gonna line this up. We are gonna be using the entire sheet here. If you didn't want to use the entire sheet, you can cut it with the entire sheet on here, but you can easily cut this with scissors, no problem. And then I'm gonna take a brayer and just make sure that this is adhered down really well. If you're worried about it moving, you can always take painter's tape or masking tape to secure down the plastic. That way it doesn't move while it's cutting. And we do this a lot here at Maker's Gonna Learn. I love to use painter's tape to make sure that my material is not gonna move. It just gives me a little bit more security. Okay, so now we are just going to slide this in. I've got my fine point blade loaded. And then we're just gonna hit go. Okay, so make sure that before you're taking it off of your Cricut that it did cut all the way through, and you can see the dot of the eye cut all the way through. And you're gonna find that there will be some parts that stick a little bit. That is totally normal. I am gonna flip this over and kind of remove it from the mat this way. Remember, we have those very delicate pieces that are connecting the middles of our letters. So we wanna be super mindful when we're pulling this off that we are being very gentle. And so you're just gonna remove all of these little innards, and you can throw those away or you can use them for another craft someday. But you can see here, we've got our entire stencil. How cute is this? This would be so cute on a wood sign. I'm actually gonna apply it to a pillow today. Just a little quick fun tutorial. If you guys are done making the stencil and you're like, I already know how to do that, I just needed to know how to make the stencil, you can go ahead and be done. But I wanted to show you all really quick some tips that I like to use whenever I'm applying reusable stencils to different items. And so I'm gonna be putting this on a pillow today. Now, when I first did this, I thought, oh, I can just go in there and like use my little foam brush and apply the paint. Well, that's not really the best way to do it. And so what we found is this Krylon Easy Tack. It's just a very light adhesive. It does not leave any residue or anything like that. What we do is we take this, and I'm gonna actually lay a paper towel down here just to kind of avoid getting this all over the place. And I'm going to lightly spray just a thin coat on the back of our stencil. So you can see this is the front, and I'm gonna flip it over and spray the back. Okay, and that's gonna get nice and tacky. Make sure that if you're doing a pillowcase, you've got your zipper down on the bottom of the pillow, and then we're just gonna line this up and stick it to our pillowcase. I did iron the pillowcase as well, just to make sure that it is really as flat as it can possibly be. Got a few little wrinkles here and there, but that's okay. And so this makes sure that our stencil is stuck down to our fabric, which I really, really love and appreciate. And so you can use whatever paint you want. I really wanted to use this golden sunset color, but I will say that I think a more of like a glossy or just a latex based paint is gonna work better. So like the matte, I'll show you all. The first one that I did, I used a matte paint for this, and when it dried, it tends to like pull up these edges. And so my theory is that if you use paint with a little bit more latex, like a satin finish, or a glossy finish, something like that, it's not going to dry up like this, but this still looks really, really cute, and like I still love it. But that's just like a little tidbit that I learned during the process of me making it. And so I'm just gonna get a little bit of this paint out. And I've got a foam brush. And then we're just gonna go in and dab this on. Now with the fabric, you may need to do a couple coats just to be sure. I am gonna unzip this and put just a paper towel on the inside underneath my stencil. But it didn't go through last time, but I just wanna make sure that we don't have any little accidents. But you don't want to have too much paint on your brush. Like I said before, we're going to be doing this in layers. So we're going to do one coat and then you can let it dry. Depending on the color, you're probably going to have to end up doing 2 coats. Now, if you were just doing black, it's probably going to be pretty solid the first time. So you wouldn't have to do 2 coats, but it's really just going to depend on your paint and the finish and all that. The reason we don't want to do too much paint is because it can seep under our stencil, and you don't want to go in and wipe. We just want to kind of dab. So once you've got the amount of coats that you want on this, we did 1 and then I kind of went and touched up in some areas. You can go ahead and remove your stencil. Now you can wait for it to completely dry, or you can pull it off while it's still a little bit damp. Just be super mindful of the middles of the letters to make sure they're not like coming off really quickly and like slinging paint everywhere. And then you're just gonna pull this off very gently. That way we can reuse it at a later time. So as you can see, this is the used stencil. All I do is I make sure to wash these right after I use them. If you don't, the paint is going to dry on them and it just makes like a huge mess. So you can just use a little sponge, run warm water over these and just lightly wipe away the paint. So you don't need to go like super crazy, because remember we've got all these little delicate pieces. And then you're just going to rinse it and dry it. Don't put these in the dishwasher, just hand wash them off. And then just put it on your dish rack to dry, and you can use it for the next time. And so after you've removed it, if you want to go in and fill in these little tiny gaps with your brush, you can. You can do this with a paintbrush or a foam brush, whatever you're more comfortable with. And that way you don't have these little tiny gaps. Okay, you guys, this is it. This is the final product. I am obsessed. Not only do I love the color, but I just love that we can take that stencil we just made and we can make signs with it. We can make more pillows with it. We can use whatever colors, and you're going to be able to take this design and use it multiple times on many different crafts. And so there are quite a few different things that you can make and use reusable stencils for. I recommend mainly to use them when you're doing signs, so like wood and things on a bigger scale, I guess I would say. And then even on textiles like canvas, so like a thicker, more durable textile, this is gonna work really well for. So if you all really like this and you are wanting to see what Maker's Gonna Learn is all about, we have tons of videos on our channel for you all covering many different types of crafts and other fun things like this. Thank you all for watching today. If you like this video, make sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you all liked what we did today, make sure to watch this video for more fun crafts.